In this video, we'll be working on, it's going to be lab number 12 from the Flackbox free download, the Cisco CCNA lab guide, available at flackbox.com. And this is lab number 12. The title is VLAN and Inter-VLAN routing configuration. In this lab, you'll perform a VLAN configuration for our campus network, including virtual trunking protocol, access and trunk ports, and Inter-VLAN routing. So we have everything set up. Let's get started. We're starting with BTP access and trunk ports. It says all routers and switches are in factory default state. View the VLAN database on switch 1 to verify no VLANs have been added. So we're going to go to switch 1 and jump over to the command line. And let's do a show VLAN brief. And right now, all we have is VLAN 1. We don't have anything else. These are all just defaults that pop up. So nothing is there. No VLANs have been added. We verified that. Let's go to step 2. View the default switch port status on the link from switch 1 to switch 2. So this would be gigabit Ethernet 01. And we need to go into switch 1. And let's take a look at the default switch port status. To do that, we issue the show interface gigabit Ethernet. It was a 01 and switch port. So let's take a look at that. Right now, we should see operational mode is static access, and it's in the trunking mode is dynamic auto. And then it's an access, and it is on VLAN number 1. Okay, let's go to step 3. Configure the links between switches as trunks. So we'll go back to switch 1 and start there. And at switch 1, we need to get into global configuration. Sorry about that, global configuration mode, and we're going to start with interface 01. So let's go into that, and gigabit Ethernet 01. We're there. We want to configure it as a trunk, so switch port trunk trunk encapsulation. Oop, I can't just type today. Yeah. Encap, I can just abbreviate that, and then .1Q, and we get an error, and that's because on newer switches you don't need this command. The switch port trunk encapsulation .1Q, they're going to be using .1Q by default. You do need this though for older switches, so it doesn't hurt to put it in. It just will give you an error, so that's not an issue at all. And then we need to designate switch port mode is going to be trunk, and that's done. That it was 01, and now we need to work on switch 2 for it's also 01. So let's go there, and we're going to walk through the same steps. And then at switch 2, so we want to get into privilege exec mode and global configuration mode, and we want to work on interface gigabit 01. And there we need to do the same thing. We need to issue the command switch port trunk encapsulation .1Q. So this must be an older switch because it took the command without any error messages. And then we need to change the mode to switch port mode trunk for that interface. And then we need to look at 02 on switch 2. So let's go back in there and pull that up, and we'll go exit. And then so we're on the other side of the switch now. So we're at interface gigabit Ethernet 02. And that one again, we need to do switch port trunk encapsulation .1Q. And And that's that. And then we need to set the mode to switch port mode trunk. And that should take care of both the interfaces on switch 2. We need to move over now to switch 3. So we need to work on 02. So let's pull that up. Pull the command line. Enable I can't type today, conf T. And this is switch 3. This was interface gigabit Ethernet 02. And we need to then, for switch 3, we got to do the same command. So switch port, trunk, and cap, dot 1Q, dot 1Q, and we got an error, so this must be a newer switch that doesn't need that line, that command, but we do still need to set the switch port mode as trunk, and that's done for switch 3. So configure the links between the switches as trunks. That is completed. Step 4, configure step 1 as a VTP server in the VTP domain Flackbox. So we got to go over to switch 1, and I think they by default will be in server mode, but let's take a look. And at switch 1, let's drop down a level, and we need to do the domain as Flackbox, so VTP domain, and the name that they said to use is Flackbox. We got that. All right, changing to Flackbox, and now we need to set it into server mode, which again I think is the default, but we're going to issue the command anyway. So VTP mode will be server, and yes, it's a device mode already VTP server, but that doesn't hurt anything to do that. We need to go configure switch 1 as a VTP server. That's done. Number 5, switch 2 must not synchronize its VLAN database with switch 1. So if you don't want it to automatically be getting the VLAN database information from switch 1, what we have to do is configure this in transparent mode. So it'll pass the information through, but it won't pick up and the information for itself. You'll have to still go back and configure it. And to do that, we need to go into switch 2, and we're going to drop down a level. And for switch 2, we need to set the VTP mode as, move this out of the way, transparent. And that's done. So it'll pass the information through, but it won't synchronize with switch 1. So that should be completed. Now let's go to step 6. Switch 3 must learn VLAN information from switch 1. So here's switch 3. VLANs should not be edited on switch 3. So in other words, you're not going to manually add the VLANs to switch 3 because it's going to learn the information from switch 1. So let's go over to switch 3, and we will drop down a level. So we need to change the VTP mode to client. Move this out of the way. And that is done. And we need to set the domain so they're on the same domain. So VTP domain is going to be Flackbox. That's what we set for switch 1. That's done. All right. And that should be it for that step. Step 7 said add the or engineering, sales, and native VLANs on all switches. The native VLANs on those switches are going to be by default VLAN 1, I believe, but which is a security issue, so you need to set your own, change that to a different number. And the VLANs need to be configured over here because this is the server. This is the VTP server switch, and we're going to need to configure them on switch 2 because it's in transparent mode and it's not going to learn from switch 1, whereas switch 3 will automatically get the information from switch 1, so we shouldn't have to do any VLAN configuration there. Let's start with switch 1 and start setting these up. And at switch 1, we're in global configuration mode. And the first VLAN, so you have two VLANs, engineering at 10.10.10.1 and sales at 10.10.20.1 is the default gateways. So you can see the set engineering are 10.10.10, 10, etc., and sales are 10.10.20. We'll want to set the engineering VLAN as 10, and then the sales VLAN as 20, just so it matches up with this. It makes it easier. So back to, yes, we're in switch 1 already, and we'll want to set VLAN 10. And for the name, this is going to be the engineering, so we'll just call it eng. And then we need to exit down a level, and we want to do VLAN 20, which is going to be for the sales. So we're going to name that sales. And we also want to set the new native VLAN number for increased security. And to do that, we drop down a level and we do VLAN, and you just give it a number. We'll use 199. I hope I did that right. I'm not sure if that extra space is going to mess anything up. So let's just make sure. VLAN 199. I don't think so, but just to be sure. And then we have to name it. So we're going to name this one, we're going to make this native. And then so that's, pull this down a little bit. That was step 7. We did, okay, so we need to go now to switch 2. We have to add them to switch 2 because it's not going to learn them from switch 1. So at switch 2, we're going to do the same. We're going to go with VLAN 10 for engineering. We're going to give it a name of engineering. Hit enter. And we need to also do the sales VLAN, which was VLAN 20. And name sales. And we need to set up the native VLAN as VLAN 199. And name will be native. And that should be it, because we don't need to set these up on switch 3 because it'll learn it from switch 1. And the next step is to verify the VLANs are in the database on each switch. So we'll go here to switch 1 and we'll do a show VLAN brief command, and we should see our VLANs now. And there we go. So VLAN 10 is engineering, VLAN 20 is sales, and VLAN 199 is native. So that's set on switch 1. Switch 2 we manually configured. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to do a show VLAN brief, and we should see the same. So yes, 10 for engineering, 20 for sales, 199 native. And although we didn't set them up on switch 3 because switch 1 is acting as the server and switch 3 is acting as the client, we should still see them. And let's find out. And then on switch 3, we're going to do a show VLAN brief. And there they are. We can see them. 10, 20, and 199. Engineering, sales, and native. So we verified the VLANs are in the database on each switch. Now configure the trunk lines to use VLAN 199 as the native VLAN for better security. Configure the trunk lines to use VLAN 199 as the native for better security. Okay. So we'll go to switch 1. And we'll get that open up a little bit. And then at switch 1, we have to go into global configuration mode, and we need to work with interface 01. So interface gigabit Ethernet 01. And the command we want to issue here is switch port trunk for native, and then VLAN is 199. So that should be done on switch 1. Now we'll have to do it twice on switch 2. So we'll start with 01, interface 01. And global configuration mode. This is switch 2 interface gigabit Ethernet 01. And we need to issue the same command, switch port trunk native VLAN 199. So that's done. Now we need to do the interface on the other side, which is 02. All right, let's pull that up. Pull this up a little bit. And for switch 2, this is interface 02. So interface gigabit Ethernet 02. And we're going to again do the switch port trunk native. And it's going to be VLAN 199. So that should take care of switch number 2. We got both interfaces there. And we need to go to, we need to change it on switch 2 because this is the new native. So, or switch 3 that is. So switch 3, we have to do it in global configuration mode. We're going to use interface gigabit Ethernet 02. 02. And we're going to issue the command switch port trunk native. I don't know why I can't spell that today. VLAN. Can't spell that either. All right, VLAN 199. All right, that looks good. Port consistency restored, so that's good. So now they're all matching up. That's a good thing. And that should be it for that step, which was configure the trunks to use VLAN 199 as the native VLAN. So that's done. We got all 3 switches. Now the next step is configure the switch ports connected to the PCs with the correct VLAN configuration. So we have to configure these ports so that they're using the correct VLANs. So again, engineering is going to be VLAN 10, sales will be VLAN 20, sales 20, sales 20, engineering 10. Let's go ahead and start doing that at switch 1. And let's see, let's end and go to comp T. And we're going to be, so we have 2 here. We have 01 and 02 are both going to be for VLAN 10. So we can change both of these at the same time using the interface range command. And get down here. To do that is just interface and then range, and then you do fast Ethernet, and it's going to be 01 through 2 because we want 1 and 2 to both be on VLAN 10 because they're engineering PCs. So we need to change the switch port mode access, and that should take care of both of those. And we need to do switch port mode. No, switch port access is going to be VLAN 10 because those are the engineering ports. Yes, that'd be correct. So we still have number 3 to do. So 03, we have to do that. So let's drop down a bit. And we've got 1, 2, we got to do interface, fast Ethernet 03. And we're going to go with switch port mode is going to be access. And it's going to also, no, this one's going to be on VLAN 20 because that's a sales PC. So switch port access VLAN, and this is going to be VLAN 20 because that's a sales PC. Okay, that should be right. Now we need to go to configure the switch ports connected to the PC. So switch 2 doesn't have any PCs connected to it. We have to go to switch 3 now and do the same kind of thing. So at switch 3, we need to have, we have 2 sales PCs over here on 1 and 2, 01 and 02. So we can configure both of those at the same time. So let's let's drop down a level, and we're going to again do the interface range command, and we're going to say fast Ethernet, and the range for switch 3 was 01 and 2. Yes. So 01, and it'll be through 2. That should get us able to configure both of these at the same time. And we need switch port mode will be access. So those two should be done for that. And then switch port is going to be access for, these are sales PC for VLAN 20. That should be correct. And we need to also set the interface 03, and that should be VLAN 10 for engineering. So let's drop down a level and let's get into, it was 03, I believe. Yep. So interface fast Ethernet 03. And again, switch port mode access. And this time it's going to be, the command is for the VLAN is going to be switch port access VLAN, and this would be VLAN 10 because it's an engineering PC. Okay, that should be done. Configure switch ports with the correct VLAN configuration. That should be done. Verify that engineering PC 1 has connectivity to engineering PC 3. So verify connectivity over here. And we will, I'm not sure why that looks, anyway, I think that's spanning tree. So let's verify that. So we need to go to engineering 1. And we want to go to the desktop command prompt. And we're going to want to ping over here to 10.10.10.12. So ping 10.10.10.12. And let's give that a try. So that's working. We're getting a response. Verify sales 1 has connectivity to sales 3. So sales 1 is here. We want to verify it has connectivity to sales 3. So let's open up sales 1, go to the desktop, command prompt, and that we want to ping 10.10.20.12. 10.10.20.12. And we have a response, so that's working. So that's good. Let's go to the next step. All right, so now we're going to work on Inter-VLAN routing, option 1, separate interfaces on the router. So in this option, we're basically, if it's saying separate interfaces on the router, we're going to configure interface fast Ethernet 00, which is here on router 1 as the default gateway for the engineering PCs. So we're going to dedicate a specific interface to a specific VLAN. So this will end up being for engineering, and then 01 as the gateway for PC. So this interface will be dedicated to VLAN for the PC's VLAN. This is the disadvantage of this is if you have lots of VLANs, you'll run out of interfaces, but it's good to know how to do this. So configure interface fast Ethernet 00, which is over here on router 1, as the default gateway for the engineering PCs. So we need to go into router 1 and enable CompT, and we want, it's going to be for engineering, the default gateway is going to be 10.10.10.1, right? Yeah, so we'll start there. So let's go to interface, and it's a fast Ethernet, and that was interface 00. And we want to set the IP address as 10.10.10.1. That's for VLAN 10 with a /24 subnet 255.255.255.0. And we need to bring that up. So no shut. And configure fast Ethernet 00 as the gateway for engineering PCs. That's done. Number 14 is configure interface 01 on the router as the default gateway for sales PCs. So we'll stay on router 1. We're going to drop down a level, and we're going to do interface 01 this time. So interface fast Ethernet 01. as the default gateway for the sales PCs. So the gateway for the sales should be 10.10.20.1. That should be the IP address. So let's go ahead and set that. IP address will be 10.10.20.1 with a 255.255.255.0. And that should take care. Oh, and we need to do the no shut. We need to bring it active. We need to bring it live. Step 14, configure interface 01 as the default gateway for the sales PC. So that should be done. The next step is going to be to configure switch 2, which is here, to support Inter-VLAN routing using router 1 as the default gateway. So what this is basically going to do is allow sales and engineering PCs that are in different subnets to communicate with each other. And the way this is going to happen is the traffic's going to have to go up to the router and then be routed back down. So we can do that now. So let's go to switch 2 to support Inter-VLAN routing. Okay. And to do that, we're going to have to, which is the interface? We'll work on 01. So let's do enable conf t, and we want to work on interface fast Ethernet 01, and we need to do switch port. Mode is going to be access, and we're going to configure it switch port access for VLAN 10. So traffic for VLAN 10 is going to be dedicated to this side, coming up this direction. And that, okay, so configure switch to support Inter-VLAN routing as the default gateway. Got it. So we need to do it for this interface as well then, 01. So let's pull that back up. Let's drop down a level. And on switch 2, we're going to go, we need to set up VLAN 20 access. So that's going to be interface fast Ethernet 02. Yes. And for that one, we want to do the same commands basically. So on 02, the difference is going to be it's for VLAN 20. So switch port mode is going to be access, and switch port access is going to be for VLAN 20 this time. Okay, so we configured switch 2 to support Inter-VLAN routing using R1 as the default gateway. So again, traffic that comes from the various areas will go through the switch up to the router. The router will then route it to the different subnets. So that's sort of disadvantageous because you're actually having to send the traffic up this way, whereas if this is a layer 3 switch, you could just route straight across it and the traffic wouldn't have to go up this way. But we're working on, okay, so we did step 15. Let's go to step 16. Verify the Engineering 1 PC has connectivity to the VLAN 20 interface on R1. So the VLAN 20 interface on R1 should be 10.10.20.1. So let's go to Engineering 1. Let's pull up the command prompt and let's try pinging. And I said it was 10.10.20 because it's VLAN 20.1. And we're getting a good result there. So we got the interface is working. We got connectivity. Verify Engineering 1 PC has connectivity to Sales 1. So here's Sales 1, which is here. So let's pull up that again. And the desktop command prompt. And Sales 1 is 10.10.20.10 this time. So we can just add a 0 there and ping that and see if that works. Let's see if we get success. First timed out was probably ARP, and then we're getting a successful ping. So we verified it has connectivity to Sales 1. Step 18, it's saying cleanup. shutdown interface fast Ethernet 01, which is this one on R1. Okay, well, let's do that. And we'll pull that up. And we'll drop down a level. And we're going to go to interface fast Ethernet 01. And to shut it down, you just issue the shutdown command. And that interface should be down. And you can see it is down. Packet tracer shows it in red. Let's move on to the next step. So we're going to be doing Inter-VLAN routing option 2, router on a stick. So router on a stick, instead of having one interface dedicated to each individual VLAN, so we had one VLAN over here and we had one over here, router on a stick will allow us to configure a single interface to carry traffic for multiple VLANs by creating virtual interfaces on that one physical interface. And so we're going to configure sub interfaces on fast Ethernet 00 on router 1 as the default gateway for the engineering and sales PCs. So to do that, we're going to have to go into router 1 and we're going to be working with interface 00. So let's get over there and we'll drop down a level and we're going to start with interface fast Ethernet 00. And we had previously set an IP address somewhere up here. There it is individually for each of the interfaces, so we need to get rid of that. Fast Ethernet 00, we need to do the no IP address command. That'll take away the IP address that we previously configured, because we're going to need to break the one interface into more than one virtual interfaces. And we need to do a no shut command and to make sure that it's brought up so that when we configure the virtual interfaces, and we need to go, let's exit, we're going to go to interface fast Ethernet, and it's 00, and we want to create it first for the 10 VLAN. So to do that, we do interface fast Ethernet 00, and then you do a dot and then the VLAN number. So .10 in this case, and it changed state to up because it's pretty quick. It's a virtual interface, and we need to then do the command of what is it? Encapsulation .1Q for VLAN 10. So this will tag the traffic that's coming up as VLAN 10. And is that all we needed to do? Configure sub interfaces. So we have to do, that was interface 00 for VLAN 10. Now we need to do the same thing for, oh, actually we need to add an IP address to this sub interface of .10. And to do that, we just do the IP address. And for that one, it would be, for the 10 VLAN, it's going to be 10.10.10.1 with a 24 subnet. Okay, so we did the encapsulation .1Q. We've added the IP address. Now we need to work on the second VLAN, the second virtual interface. So let's drop out of that. And so again, we have to go to interface, fast Ethernet. This is going to be 00.20 for VLAN 20. And we want to do encapsulation and .1Q. And this is for VLAN 20, so it's the traffic is tagged properly. We need to give it the IP address for .20, which is going to be 10.10.20.1. And it's going to be IP address of 10.10.20.1 with a 24 subnet 0. So we've got 10.10.20.1, and that should be it. We have two virtual interfaces now running on this particular interface for VLANs 10 and VLAN 20. So it says configure switch to support inter-VLAN routing using R1 as the default gateway. So we have to configure switch to support inter-VLAN routing using R1 as the default gateway. Okay, so let's go to switch 2. And we'll pull that up. And we're going to drop down a level. And for this, we're going to work on the interface is 0, 1 for switch 1. So we're going to do interface fast Ethernet 0, 1. And we need to basically set up switch port, trunk, end cap, and it's going to be .1Q. .1Q. Right? Yeah. And then we're going to do switch port mode is going to be trunk. And that should be done for that. So we took care of that interface. And that should be done. Now verify the Engineering 1 PC has connectivity to the VLAN 20 interface on R1. So the VLAN 20 interface is fast Ethernet 0.0.20, but we'll just ping that as 10.10.20.1. So I think that's what we're being asked to ping. Engineering PC 1, so we're going to go there, and we're going to pull up the command prompt, and that should be ping 10.10.20.1. All right, that looks good. We have a reply. Now verify the Engineering 1 PC has connectivity to Sales 1, which is this IP address of 10.10.20.10. So let's do that. And we're going to just do an up arrow and do 10.10.20.10 because that's Sales 1 right here. And let's see if that works. There we go. We've got a reply, so we've got good connectivity there. And the next step is saying shutdown interface fast Ethernet 0.0. So we're going to shut this interface down now on router 1. So let's go into router 1. We'll drop down a level. We're going to do interface fast Ethernet 0.0, and we're going to issue the shut command or shutdown. So that'll bring it down. You can see it's all red now in Packet Tracer. So we finished step 23. Let's go to step 24. So this is Inter-VLAN routing option 3, layer 3 switch. So this is, we shut down these interfaces because we're not going to have traffic from the various VLANs routed up through the router. We're going to have switch 2, which must be a layer 3 switch, which is capable of routing. We're going to have the traffic just go straight through the switch. So it'll speed things up because it won't have to go up this interface to the router and back down. The switch will handle this work. So this first step is to enable IP routing, label layer 3 or IP routing on switch 2. So let's go to switch 2, and we need to get into global configuration mode, and the command is just IP routing. I think, yeah, IP routing, and configure SVIs on switch 2, switch virtual interfaces, I believe that is, on switch 2 to support Inter-VLAN routing, so from VLAN 20 to 10 or 10 to 20 between the engineering sales VLANs. So yes. So to do that, we have to go back to switch 2, and we're going to do interface VLAN 10. Start with that one. And for VLAN 10, we want 10.10.10.1 as the IP address. So let's do IP address for VLAN 10 will be 10.10.10.1 with a 24 subnet mask. And now we have to do it for VLAN 20 as well. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do interface VLAN 20 this time, and its IP address will be 10.10.20.1. So IP address of 10.10.20.1, 255.255.255.0. And that should be all we need to do because now we have VLAN 10 and 20 accounted for with IP addresses. Let's verify that Engineering 1 PC has connectivity to the VLAN 20 interface on switch 2. So the VLAN 20 interface that we configured in here was 10.10.20.1. So let's go to this PC and let's try pinging it. So we're going to ping, and that was 10.10.20.1, which is, and let's see if we get a good result. So we're pinging from here, request timeout. It was an ARP, and then, so that's good. We're getting a response. And now it's saying verify the Engineering 1 PC has connectivity to Sales 1. So we want to ping this IP address over here. And let's try that. So that was 10.10.20.10, right? And let's see what that does. And we get a timeout. There it goes. So we have connectivity, so that's good. So we took care of that, and that's it. That's the end of that particular lab. So we did routing where we assigned a specific interface to a specific VLAN. We did routing where we had one interface carrying multiple VLANs, or routing on a stick. And then we configured without the router at all. We set up switch 2 to act as a layer 3 switch to do routing as the final option. So that's it for this video, and I will see you in the next lab.